I kept the bottle they meant to kill me with. And a week later, I gift-wrapped it and handed it to my daughter-in-law's parents in front of everyone, then watched the color drain from 8 faces at once, the exact second they realized the bottle remembered the poison they poured for me. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Martin Hale. I am 72, a grandfather, and until last winter I thought the worst my family could do to me was forget to call. The heart flutters began after the first hard snow. They were not dramatic things, at least not at first, just an odd, sinking thud that made me set the coffee down and breathe slower. By January, my daughter-in-law, Kendra, was telling anyone who would listen that I should not be up on ladders anymore, not with my age and my history. It was a story she liked to tell while looking concerned enough to be praised. I did not have a history. I had a pacemaker checkup every spring and the kind of weariness that does not make a sound when it sits down beside you. I live in the house my wife and I built when we were young enough to think would never rotted and love never cracked. Her name was June. She has been gone 10 years, and sometimes the way her perfume rises out of the linen closet when the heat kicks on feels like proof she only stepped into the next room. My son, Aaron, grew up in these rooms and used to drag his toes on the floor when he tried to sneak out. When he fell in love with Kendra, I convinced myself I loved her too, because that was easier than exploring the needle of annoyance that slid between us any time she walked through my door and spoke like a landlord doing an inspection. We had one small orbit that never failed to pull us all forward, my granddaughter, Lucy. She is 9 now, with a cowlick that will not obey, and a way of squinting at injustice that is the mirror of the way June used to look at me when I said something careless. If there is a shred of innocence left anywhere in this story when I am finished, it is because Lucy existed in the middle of the fire and did not let me forget I had something worth saving. It started in the hospital, if you are asking me where to place the first tack in this map of betrayals. A dizzy spell, nothing more, sent me to the emergency room one Tuesday. The doctor kept me for observation. There is a way that machines talk to one another when you are lying very still in a hospital bed that makes you feel like a rumor. Vitals this, labs that, telemetry something. I listened, hands folded on the thin blanket, and told myself to stop being dramatic. Aaron and Kendra arrived that evening with a helium balloon that said get well soon and a box of store-bought cookies. Kendra touched my forearm with the lightness of someone who has only ever touched people when cameras are present. We were so worried, she said. We were at your place yesterday, Dad, Aaron added, a little too quickly. Lucy made a get-well card. She drew your workshop with the red door. I smiled. She never forgets the details. Kendra's eyes slid to the beeping monitor. The doctor said the arrhythmia finally showed up on an EKG. That is, significant at your age. I did not ask who had spoken to the doctor, or why Kendra sounded like she was reading aloud from an article about people like me. I asked Aaron to put the card on the windowsill where I could see it, and for a few minutes we were quiet together in a way that felt almost like a family. The nurse came to check the 4. You have a sharp little artist there, she said, tapping the card. And a granddaughter who worries. She lowered her voice. She asked me where we keep the good glue for the crafts cart. Said she wanted your heart to never fall apart. When they left, Aaron kissed my forehead. He had not done that since he was a boy. It was a clumsy thing that made us both blush. Rest, Dad, he murmured. He took the balloon, said the string kept tangling in the door jamb, and promised to be back in the morning. They were back at 9 the next day with a gift bag from one of those boutique wine shops that sell more story than drink. Kendra set it in my lap like royalty conferring a title. For when you come home, she said. It is called Whistler's Reserve. A very old whiskey. Your favorite, right? Whiskey was my favorite, but I did not buy anything that came with a marketing story because stories are what you pour into a glass when you have nothing worth telling. I prefer the bottle that sits a little crooked on the shelf and tastes the same every winter. Thank you, I said, because the nurses were in earshot and because men my age were taught to be polite even when politeness felt like holding the wrong end of a knife. We had a long night, Kendra added with theatrical exhaustion. Getting your house in order. There is so much clutter, Martin. My tools are not clutter, I said. That was the only thing I let myself say. She laughed softly. I did not mean the workshop. I mean the paperwork. We found the deeds in your will, Anne. Aaron cleared his throat. The warning was gentle, but it was a warning. We will talk later, Ken. Of course, she said, laying her hand over his on the armrest. The ring caught the fluorescent lights and threw sparks. Before they left, Kendra pulled the tissue paper around the bottle's neck so it would look untouched, then patted my shoulder. Do not worry about a thing, she said, and what I heard in the space beneath the words was, we have a plan. Hospitals are full of talking. They do not expect the people in beds to be good at it, but they are used to their own voices, and so they fill the quiet. Through the thin curtain 2 rooms down I heard an insurance case manager explain out of network, I heard a med student trip over jargon, I heard a television tell a woman in a bed that daytime court shows are the saddest sport on earth. And around midnight, when I was pretending to sleep, I heard my son's voice in the hallway. He did not see me watching the sliver of light at the curtain's edge. Tomorrow morning, he said. Before he is discharged. She said yes at 8. Kendra's answer was a rush. Good. The estate sale team is scheduled for Saturday. The truck is booked. If we do not move now we will miss the spring buyers. The spring buyers, Aaron repeated. He sounded like a student copying an answer he did not understand. What about the tools? Dad will lose his mind if some stranger auctions his drill press. Then he should have labeled it, Kendra said. Do you want to live like this? Waiting for him to die so you can move forward. We cannot carry his junk and his medical drama while Lucy is growing up. It is cruel to her. Aaron did not answer at first. When he spoke, his voice was smaller. And the bottle? On the sideboard, Kendra said. He will drink it when he gets home, because he is sentimental and stupid and will toast your mother like he always does. I printed the instructions twice. It is tasteless if you do it right. The blogs all say. A nurse's shoes squeaked as she turned the corner, and the voices broke apart like oil in water. The hallway went quiet except for the hum of air through the vents. I lay very still and watched the curtain edge glow again with the blue light of the monitors. I did not feel rage at first. I felt a terrible, almost merciful clarity. Imagine a puzzle you have been trying to solve, and then someone tells you the missing piece was never there. That is what it was like. All the small slights and the quickness with which Kendra glanced at the corners of my rooms and the way Aaron never stayed long enough to see me do the things I still could do, all of it arranged itself neatly, like chairs before a show. My wife used to say I take a breath before I walk into a fight. It was not about fear. It was about deciding who I will be when the door opens. At 4 a.m. I asked the charge nurse for a pen. She brought me a pen and a form that let me revoke the medical proxy Aaron had been given 5 years ago when my doctor told me to expect nothing worse than forgetting where I left the truck keys. I called my lawyer, Roberta, on the number she tells her dearest clients to use when the night looks like it might eat them alive. Her voice was sleep-thick and fierce in equal measure. "On it," she said. "You will not go home to an ambush." She began making calls that pried the handles off every door Kendra thought she had locked. She filed an emergency revocation notice with my providers before rounds, executed a trustee appointment, and recorded a transfer on death placeholder. She sent immediate hold notices to my banks to freeze non-routine activity. The locks on my house were changed before breakfast. The deed to my home moved that morning into a trust with a trustee who does not answer to my son's voice. My bank put a hold on anything that was not a regular bill. Roberta arranged for a private lab courier to pick up sealed, labeled vials and swabs from my porch that afternoon to test for anything a person might dissolve into whiskey to make a grandfather stop breathing in his sleep. The police would take custody of the remainder. She told me to ask the nurse to place a small, patient property, sticker on the base of the gift bottle, date and unit, proves where you got it, the nurse said, and to take time-stamped photos of the sticker in the hospital room, because chain of custody is a story without interesting chapters but an excellent ending. By then the sun had smeared itself up one side of the city. I looked at Lucy's drawing of my workshop with the red door. She had drawn a wreath on the door because she cannot resist giving everything a celebration. The hospital would not discharge me until lunch. Aaron and Kendra said they would be back to pick me up, but I told the nurse my neighbor, Henry, was on his way. He is 81 and refuses to die because he has promised too many people he will help them with their gutters. He arrived with his cap on crooked and a thermos full of coffee that could dissolve a nail. His snort, when I asked how he felt about being my getaway driver, meant yes. We left through the parking garage because it felt like a small rebellion. The house was not empty when I opened the new front door. The house was holding its breath. There were bright-colored stickers on furniture, green, blue, pink, like a handful of candy had been thrown too hard and stuck where it landed. The stickers had small handwritten codes on them. Kendra's handwriting is a tidy, precise thing, entirely without softness. "Do I need the shotgun?" Henry asked reasonably. "No," I said, and then I put my hand on his shoulder and sat down, because there is a moment when a man realizes the line has been crossed, and it does not feel like a scream. It feels like a well-tuned machine settling into gear. I know what they are doing now. We walked room to room together. The china June inherited from her grandmother had a pink sticker that said, Lot 19. The oil painting of the lake where we taught Aaron to swim had a green sticker that said, Lot 4. The cedar chest June and I bought our second winter together stood open, its contents rifled and refolded with factory indifference. I did not cry, because men my age grew up with fathers who cried in barns and garages, not in living rooms. I allowed myself one hand pressed hard against the doorframe of our bedroom. I let the anger find that place in me and sit. On the kitchen island lay a printout, preliminary lot values, emailed from an address with Eloise's initials to an auction coordinator, CC&G Kendra. In the margin, a note in Victor's hand, "Move quickly, spring buyers." On the sideboard was the bottle of Whistler's Reserve. It was not quite what it wanted to be. The shrink band at the top had been warmed and pressed back by a hand that does not usually do careful work. Under the glass you could see the cork turning a shade darker where liquid meets air. People who have poured whiskey every winter can tell when something is off even if all you do is hold the bottle by the light. Before I touched the cork, I set the bottle on a baking sheet, photographed it from 4 angles with the hospital property sticker visible, and, wearing nitrile gloves, drew off 2 30-milliliter samples with sterile pipettes into tamper-evident vials Roberta's clerk had labeled. I swabbed the inside of the neck and underside of the cork, sealed the swabs, signed the chain of custody card, and set the kit by the door for the courier. I looked up at the little framed photograph that hangs above the sink, the one of June on a boat, laughing so hard at something I said that you can see the tender seam of a scar above her lip, a teenage accident I always loved because it made her look like she had been cut by joy. Forgive me for turning our home into a courtroom, I said out loud. Per the detective's instructions, I did not pour anything down the drain. The courier took the vials and swabs, a patrol unit picked up the remaining liquid for evidence. Only then did I rinse the original bottle, let it dry, and fill it with strong black tea the color of whiskey. The refilled bottle was only a prop. I eased the cork back until it sat where it had before. Then I slid the bottle into a clean evidence bag that Roberta's clerk had handed to me on the porch like she was smuggling a heart transplant. I kept the original receipt Kendra left in the gift bag. Gift receipts are a modern confession. It was stamped with the date and time, the register number, and the clerk's name. People forget what their lives are telling on them while they sign their names to everything. The lab report arrived 2 days later. It did not use the easy words a layman reaches for. It used the kind of words you read twice aloud just to hear how clinical language can be when it stands next to malice. It listed 2 things no one should taste and 1 thing no one should smell. It included photographs of the interior of the neck of the bottle, the residue, the particular crystal shapes of dissolved things that cannot hide under a brown wave. The cover letter included a line I highlighted with a bright yellow marker, consistent with intentional adulteration by a third party. Roberta sent the report to the county detective she plays chess with on Wednesdays and to the district attorney's investigator, who once told me he does not expect the old to fight back. He asked me not to confront anyone alone, and we agreed I would text him at the dinner once everyone was in the same room. She also sent it to the attorney who represents Kendra's parents in matters of real estate development, because there is nothing like watching a colleague realize the dinner they are going to attend next week is going to be very different. That dinner had been on the family calendar since October. Kendra's parents, Victor and Eloise, enjoy staging their family life with the precision of an open house. They host a winter feast every year for a curated list of people who approve of them. I have always been included because my presence is a social asset, an elder whose approval suggests their children have not married poorly. I called Victor myself. I am looking forward to next Saturday, I said. It will be good to see everyone. He made a satisfied sound. We will raise a glass to your health, Martin. I looked at the dry bottle on my counter, the tea sitting in it like an obedient understudy. Yes, I said. Let us do exactly that. On Thursday, 2 days before the dinner, the estate sale company called. The woman on the other end had a voice like bubble wrap. We have an appointment for Saturday morning to stage and tag Mr. Hale's residence. We wanted to confirm access. There will be no sale, I said. A pause. Then, not quite as sweet, Kendra said. I am Mr. Hale, I said. The home is in a private trust, and the trustee has not authorized any sale or removal. If you step on the property, you will trespass in front of 3 cameras and a neighbor whose hobby is calling the police. Your associate may find herself answering questions about possession of stolen property. Withdraw. Another pause, and the smallest exhale of a defeated plan. We will update our records. By afternoon, the stickers were gone. Kendra had hustled back to peel them off once the company withdrew, as if removing the tape could erase the intent. I kept one. Lot 19. I put it on the edge of the bathroom mirror. It is still there. I am not sure when I will remove it. Lucy came by with Aaron the next day. She slipped herself into my lap without asking, the way children do with the bodies that have always made space for them. Mom says you are fragile now, she whispered in my ear, as if it was a secret between us, as if her mother had meant fragile the way you mean a teacup, not a pawn. I am old, I said softly. That is different. She nodded, wise. I like your red door. I kissed the top of her head. Me too. Kendra stood by the mantel and looked through me like you look through a window when you want to see the weather and not the house. We will pick you up at 6 on Saturday, she said. Victor will be insulted beyond recovery if you are late. I will drive myself, I said. I have a gift for him. A gift? Her eyes sharpened. What sort of gift? A bottle, I said. People like us keep bottles for moments like these. I wore the black suit June insisted I keep even after we stopped going to dances. It is the suit I wore to her funeral. It fits differently now, but it knows me. I drove to Victor and Eloise's house slowly because there is something about arriving at the scene of your enemy's party with the instrument of their panic in your hand that makes you want to be sure. The door opened to warmth and the shimmering noise tin ceilings make when strangers laugh beneath them. The house smelled like butter and citrus oil. Victor kissed the air on either side of my head and told me how good I looked even as his eyes searched my face for weakness. Martin, Eloise said, pressing both my hands, you are a treasure. We worried you might not feel well enough. I would not miss this, I said, and I let the bottle rest in the crook of my arm so that it shone properly under their chandelier. A small contribution to your bar. I set Whistler's Reserve on the marble sideboard. The label caught the light. For a heartbeat, Kendra and Aaron did not see it. Then Kendra turned, her smile fixed in place like a pinned butterfly, and stopped breathing. I watched it happen. The body is honest when fear walks in. The fingers flex, the neck forgets how to be graceful. Dad, Aaron said, too loudly, as if volume could reverse a decision that had already been made, you should not have brought. It is the thoughtful thing to do, I said mildly. I did not want to drink alone. Victor clapped his hands. A toast, then. He has always enjoyed being the person who says what everybody else obeys. Guests gathered. Crystal chimed. Conversations were folded and set aside so the host could be charming. Kendra stood behind the sideboard as if her body could keep the bottle from entering the story. Eloise offered little napkins with the family monogram, and I thought about the numbers Roberta had emailed me, the payments Kendra's parents had made to help Aaron with a down payment, the way that money had boomeranged into their own investments, the circular economy of greed dressed up as care. The district attorney's investigator was in the back corner, talking to an accountant about tax shelters. He nodded to me once, in the small, barely visible way that lets a man know he is not alone. Before we drink, I said, raising my empty glass, I want to thank Victor and Eloise for being such attentive in-laws. It is not easy to be generous across generations. Eloise beamed. Victor preened. Kendra's eyes flicked between their faces and the bottle like she was trying to locate the source of a fire in a crowded theater. And, I continued, making my voice a little grander than I usually let it be, I brought a special bottle. A gift I received when I was in the hospital, when I was most in need of comfort and least aware of how much that comfort would cost. I reached for the Whistler's Reserve. I cradled it in my arms like a child. The room leaned toward me, the way rooms do when a story is about to be told out loud. I will pour for our hosts first. No, Kendra said, in a voice that was almost a hiss. She reached across the sideboard and touched the bottle as if she could anchor it. It is not necessary. I smiled at her, and I let her see everything in my face I had hidden for months. On the contrary, I said. It is essential. The cork made a small, showy pop. I let everyone admire the color in the neck, the way it caught the light. I poured an inch into Victor's glass. An inch into Eloise's. I lifted the bottle once more, as if to offer Aaron a pour, and then set it down. I lifted my own glass, which held nothing. I looked Victor in the eye. To family, I said. Which is to say, to truth. I tasted the air. Eloise raised her glass, but her hand trembled so hard the liquid trembled with it. Victor laughed, and his laugh sounded like a door unlocking in a storm. He lifted the glass. Stop, Kendra said, louder. The room froze. It is a peculiar thing, the silence that follows a woman pleading in a polite room. It is total, and it is merciless. Stop. Victor turned to her, affronted. What on earth for? Eloise glanced around the circle of faces and understood, too late, that the stage lighting had changed. Kendra, she said, through her teeth. What are you doing? I lowered my empty glass. I let the pause grow an extra inch, because there is a distance between what a person is and what they believe themselves to be, and sometimes it requires a small dark space to be seen. I kept the original liquid and swabs with a clean chain of custody. They're at the county lab now, I said conversationally. This bottle holds tea. I kept it because I thought you might like to see what it looks like when an attempt on an old man's life comes back home for dinner. Someone gasped. It might have been my son. It might have been me from 30 years ago watching the first lie a boy tells without understanding how it feels to become the sort of man who tells it again. Aaron took one unsteady step toward me. Dad, he said, and his voice broke on the edge of the word in a way that made me almost ache. This is not what you think. It is exactly what I think, I said softly. You brought a bottle to my hospital room while you were putting stickers on your mother's plates. You were planning to sell my life while I lay under fluorescent lights. And when that did not seem fast enough, you followed your wife's research and instructions. You made certain I would not wake up long enough to stop you. Kendra's mother found her voice, small and sharp. Kendra. She opened her mouth to lie. I watched the muscles gather for it. Then she saw the investigator step forward from the back of the room, and the lie collapsed before it was born. She did not confess. People like her rarely do. She did something better for my purposes. She reached for the bottle with a hand that shook hard enough to make the glass clink against the marble, and she said, to no one in particular and everyone at once, how could you be so stupid, Aaron? Victor set his untouched glass down so gently it did not make a sound. Everyone in the sitting room, he commanded. Now. We moved as one, all the glittering guests and all the hidden rot, into a room with a piano no one played. The investigator asked me if I would like to sit. I remained standing. It felt important to let my knees know I still trusted them. He spoke calmly, the way men with badges do when the blows they are about to land are legal. He described the lab report in general terms. He explained that a second, independent test would be completed by the state. He said the word attempt, and then he said the word homicide, and then he said the word elder, and even those with cocktails in their hands understood the law was not going to admire them. Aaron began to talk and did not stop, a flood of words that tried to drown intention in ignorance. I did not know what she put in it. I thought it was a supplement. She said it was, she said it would help. She said it was harmless. Kendra spoke once, when the investigator mentioned her parents' text messages to an auctioneer. Those were estimates, she said, as if the distinction mattered. Not commitments. Eloise lowered her head as if the music she heard hurt. Victor sat perfectly still, a man making a list of losses. You can tell a great deal about a person by how fast they begin to measure. Mr. Hale, the investigator said at last, turning to me, do you have questions? I did, but not the kind that can be answered in a room like that. I wanted to know when my son had stopped loving me enough to be afraid of what he was about to do. I wanted to ask Kendra where she learned to turn every object in a house into a number on a spreadsheet and every man into an obstacle. I wanted to ask Victor how many times he had told himself his daughter's teeth were knives and chosen to pretend they were pearls. Instead, I reached for the oh-so-familiar language I had used all my life when a job site collapsed and everyone was yelling and what you needed was a list, not a sermon. Here is what will happen, I said quietly. The estate sale is cancelled. The items already removed will be returned. The house will remain mine until I die, and then it will pass to a trust that will not be influenced by any of you. The police will continue their work. If you attempt to contact me outside the presence of counsel, I will ask for a protective order. If you attempt to contact Lucy without her parents' permission, I will ask the court to remind you what a boundary is. If you stand in my driveway, you will see lights. If you stand on my lawn, you will see cuffs. No one laughed. Good. The investigator placed a set of papers on Victor's coffee table and asked Kendra and Aaron to follow him. The room emptied by halves, conversations broken into whispers like torn cloth. Eloise sat beside me. She is a woman who has been loved for the way she performs composure. I did not know, she said finally, in a voice that wanted me to forgive her for being the sort of person who could not imagine dirty hands doing dirty work while wearing clean rings. You did not want to know, I answered. Which is different. She closed her eyes. What will you do with Lucy? What I have always done, I said. I will make a place for her to tell the truth. That night I stopped at my lawyer's office on my way home. Roberta sat me at her conference table and poured me coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. She slid a neat stack of papers toward me. This will feel good, she said, and for the first time that day, I smiled with my teeth. We signed the amendments to my will. We signed the instrument that turned my house into a home that belongs to Lucy when she is 30, not a day sooner, after she has learned how to make her own money and her own mistakes without inheriting the flavor of greed. We signed a document that ensured Aaron receives what a son receives when a father loves him and does not mistake love for enabling. We signed a copy of the lab report so I could tuck it into the back of the photograph on my mantel, behind June's laughing face, so that if God insisted on giving me a long life, I would not forget what I almost let it become. By the time I pulled into my driveway, it had started to snow again. The red door looked new in the cold, the way red doors do when winter takes all the color out of everything except what has chosen to remain steadfast. I stood in my workshop with the heater humming and held Lucy's drawing up to the window so she and I could both see the way the world looked when a man says no and means it. 2 weeks later the detective called with an update. The state lab confirmed what the private lab found. There would be charges. There would be hearings. There would be lawyers making shapes in the air with their hands and calling those shapes nuance. I thanked him. I asked him how many times he had seen something like this. He said, quietly, more than you would hope and fewer than you fear. The estate sale company sent a formal apology on letterhead. It said they had acted in good faith and had been misled by a client. It said they had returned the box labeled Lot 19 to my porch. I did not open it. I do not need to see my wife's grandmother's plates again to know what they mean. I slid the box to the back of the closet and put Lucy's old finger paintings in front of it, because if you want to keep something safe, you hide it behind the only thing that has ever mattered. I will open it with Lucy someday when she is ready to learn how objects are not worth more than the hands that hold them. In April, I stood on my back porch, coffee burning my tongue, and watched the chickadees argue about the feeder. Aaron walked across the yard with shoulders that did not know what to do with themselves. He stopped at the first step, as if he had decided that coming any closer would be an intrusion even a son could not justify. "May I sit?" he asked. "You may stand," I said. It was not cruelty. It was clarity. He leaned on the railing like a boy again. "I am sorry," he said, and it was terrible because it was true and insufficient at once. I listened when I should have questioned. I wanted what was easier. I did not try to see you clearly because seeing you as an obstacle let me be lazy. I turned the mug in my hands. "You have a daughter," I said. "She will learn how to see by watching where you look. Do not look at what you can take." That was all we said. He cried without the histrionics some men used to attract pity. He wiped his face on his sleeve and went home to learn how to be the father Lucy deserves. I do not know if he will learn it fast enough. I do not know if I will live to see it. Some stories have the decency to end in a clean line. This one gives me a future I cannot control, which is another way of saying it gives me a future. Kendra's attorney called Roberta 3 times and then stopped. There are cases you settle and cases you learn to live with amid the hum of courthouse lights. Her parents stopped sending invitations. Eloise saw me once at the market and turned down an aisle so quickly she knocked over a tower of canned tomatoes. I righted them as she disappeared. There are mercies I can offer that do not cost me my dignity. One afternoon in early May, Lucy came to the workshop with a question written across her forehead the way questions appear on children when they are learning not to apologize for needing answers. "Grandpa," she said, "why did you give them the bottle if you were not going to make them drink it?" I set down the chisel. I wiped the dust off my hands, and I let the softness in my voice be deliberate. Because sometimes the scariest thing you can do to a person is make them stand beside what they did in front of people who believed they were good. She thought about that, her mouth pressed into a small line of concentration. Then she nodded like a judge. "That is fair." We went inside for lemonade. I am not supposed to drink much whiskey anymore, which is all right, because what I needed to drink I already poured down the sink. If you came to my house today, you would see the life of an old man who has learned how to be both alone and still. The Red Door. The workshop with the wreath Lucy insists goes up in November and refuses to come down until March. The sideboard where a bottle once sat and tried to make my story shorter than it needed to be. In the hall, there are photographs. June and I at 22, too pretty to deserve the kindness life gave us. Aaron at 5, face lit up by the cake he thought his father had baked when really his mother did it all. Lucy, last week, holding up a fish she swears was longer than her arm. And behind one of those frames, there is a thin folder, the kind a man keeps not because he wants to relive it but because when he looks in the mirror he wants to remember precisely how close he came to forgetting who he was. The law will do what the law will do. Paper will move between hands. People will sit on benches and decide who meant what when they did what they did. I have already received my portion of justice. It came in a room with tin ceilings, when 8 faces learned that a bottle had come to witness and would not lie for them. I do not tell this for sympathy. I tell it because there will be a man tonight in a quiet hospital room who hears 2 voices in a hallway and thinks, surely, I am mistaken. Maybe he is. Maybe those voices are talking about something else. Or maybe he is not, and what he needs is an old stranger's voice to say, you are allowed to become a person who does not let them finish the plan. And if he needs a script for the toast he will someday give, if he needs words to pour into a glass until his hand stops shaking, he can borrow mine for a while. To family. which is to say, to truth.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.